When I saw this trailer as a post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home, I was 100% down with this movie. I was hyped. I was screaming to the top of my lungs and told everybody at Club Atlantis about the post-credit scene and just so happy about this. But then they released more than one trailer back to back to back, and it made me concerned on whether or not this was going to be a mixed bag. And I was right. It kind of is. There are some pros and some cons, or more so in this case positives and negatives to this film. Now before I get into my review, I just want to let you know that this is going to be very spoiler heavy. So if you have not seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, turn this video off now, go see the movie, come back, listen to it later. Okay, now that I put that out there, without further ado, let's get started with this review. This movie really hit the ground running when it came to the pacing. It just kept going and it was consistent throughout. It slowed down a little bit towards the beginning of the third act and a little bit towards the end of the second act, but it still kept up with, the pace was definitely steady. So you're not going to really get bored with this movie. You're going to be quite entertained. It's kind of silly of me to talk about how great the visuals are because, well, it's a Marvel movie. They're going to have great visuals. But when it comes to describing how messed up the multiverse is, they went out of their way to show you. And that's the one thing I can really appreciate about this film. This was definitely a very mad movie with everything going everywhere, but they were able to keep everything functional. It just didn't feel like it fell apart. I loved how when the multiverses collided, that everything just started going black and it looked just like how it looked at What If. They really did a good job here, and I definitely got to give credit where credit is due. As for the characters, they did a really good job with Doctor Strange. Benedict Cumberbatch is probably one of the best actors to play this character. They really matured the arc even more, even though in the first Doctor Strange film, it did have a really good arc. But this actually did kind of make him a little bit more human. I liked how it went with him, especially how the huge decision that he made during Spider-Man No Way Home was the hardest decision he had to make. And even though, and they remain consistent on this, and I have to give them credit where credit is due, they still kept the spell intact. The fact that he didn't know anything about Peter Parker being Spider-Man, but he remembers Spider-Man. So Spider-Man is still existing in this universe. And the fact that he had to make that spell and pretty much erase everyone's memory of him was something that probably was a really tough decision to make. And he also had to deal with the decision that he made in Endgame. They kind of brought everything full circle here. And for people that said, for most of the reviewers that actually saw this movie said you don't really need to watch any movies, that's a lie in itself. You really do need to watch at least 4 movies here. You need to watch Endgame, Infinity War, the first Doctor Strange movie, as well as WandaVision. It's really important for you to see those movies in order for you to get a better understanding of what's going on. But the fact that they used those references and had everything go full circle with his character, I was amazed with that. I think that was a great thing that they did with Doctor Strange, and they really did give him a more humanizing arc. But Elizabeth Olsen killed it as Wanda Maximoff. She was the first Marvel villain that I have seen in a very long time. I don't think I've ever seen a Marvel villain except for Hela. Now, Hela definitely was a villain for the sake of her being a villain, but there was more of a... People can probably relate a lot more to Wanda because of how much she lost in WandaVision, but to me, in my humble opinion, she was a villain through and through because of what she did when she was in Westview. But I digress. She really nailed it as Wanda Maximoff, as well as the Scarlet Witch. And she was a lot more powerful and a lot more hardcore coming around here. I really did appreciate her character, but I didn't really consider her to be a humanizing character or a character that was an anti-hero. She was a villain through and through, and I appreciated her more for being a villain than her being an anti-hero. She nailed it here. Unfortunately, my first negative is definitely America Chavez and how she was packaged. I actually preferred America Chavez to be more like Elizabeth from BioShock and less of the president's daughter from I believe it's Resident Evil 4. She was a MacGuffin throughout the entire movie. People were after her and she needed protecting, but it just didn't make any sense with her character. It just kind of felt off. What I mean by that is that during the movie, she was talking about the fact that she went through 73 dimensions. She knew pretty much all the laws of the multiverse and experiences of the multiverse. She had a lot of knowledge about the multiverse in itself, but she didn't know how to use her powers. But also, when she was trapped inside the cage in Illuminati, at the Illuminati's headquarters, she was able to use her powers or figure out how to use them and get out. So how come she got captured again and she didn't really know how to get out of that towards the beginning of the third act and towards the end of the second act? I don't understand. It didn't really make any sense to me. It just seemed like the editing was a bit off when it came to how they packaged America Chavez, and also the script just did not fit. It didn't make any sense. How can you have all this knowledge about the multiverse and also use your powers and figure out how it worked inside the Illuminati, but not believe in yourself towards the beginning of the third act? It doesn't make any sense. It just seemed like the editing as well as the script just did not fit the character. It's not that the character was bad, because the chemistry, and this is a positive for America Chavez, the chemistry between her and Doctor Strange was actually really, really good. It was more of a father-daughter type of dynamic. Benedict Cumberbatch and Koto Gomez, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, really did have good chemistry together. It just felt like that they really did care about each other like father and daughter. So the chemistry was great, but how America Chavez was packaged really needed work. But it's not, like I said, it's not like the character was bad. It's just she should have been packaged a lot better. Another negative is definitely the Illuminati. Now, the Illuminati was definitely hyped up in this film. So many theories, so many videos that people have done about the Illuminati, as well as who was going to be in those chairs. Now, it wasn't very disappointing when I found out who was sitting in those chairs, even though I wondered why Captain Marvel is there. But like I said, I don't know much about the Illuminati in the comics. She could have been a part of that committee. I have no idea. But of course, you had Doctor Strange, who was no longer there. You had Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four, which was introduced in this movie. Then you have Professor Xavier. Then you also have, I think he was Supreme Mordo at the time. He actually took over as Sorcerer Supreme. And I do believe that you had Captain Carter as well as Captain Marvel and Black Bolt, I believe, who was a part of the Illuminati. But the thing is, the Illuminati was supposed to be this group that was able to get the crisis before the crisis became a crisis. And the fact that they were so cavalier, well, not really, I'll probably say, yeah, I guess nonchalant and cavalier is the same thing. But the fact that they were really, really, really cavalier about the situation that Doctor Strange was in, the Doctor Strange from another dimension was in, and especially very, very cavalier about the Scarlet Witch, I'm just like, okay, if you know everything about everything, or at least everything about Wanda, wouldn't you be a bit concerned if she is magic based, since you were really concerned about Doctor Strange and you eliminated that threat because he surrendered? But this is a crazy Nexus being that wants her imaginary kids, and y'all gonna be that nonchalant? That makes zero sense. And the fact that they were offed that quickly, oh my gosh, it was embarrassing. It just seems like the hype, it just killed it. It felt like a squash match, and I'm using a wrestling term. It felt like a squash match. It was embarrassing seeing the Illuminati getting slaughtered that quickly, and it was just a joke to me. I was like, are you kidding? All this hype for nothing. I wish they did better with this. And I wish they were able to team up with Doctor Strange against Wanda instead of being so cavalier about it all. But it was what it was, and it was poor in my eyes. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about for this review before I close out is definitely the horror element. Now, a lot of reviewers were talking about the fact that this is Marvel's first horror movie. That is a complete lie. There is nothing scary about this movie at all. And I actually made a comparison to this. Consider this to be the Disney Not So Scary Halloween compared to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. If you've ever been to those events, you'll know exactly what I am talking about. This is Disney's Not So Scary Halloween. There is nothing scary at all about this feature. Now, yes, there are some Sam Raimi tropes. For those who have seen either Army of Darkness or The Evil Dead, there is few Evil Dead references and a lot of Army of Darkness references, because Army of Darkness is more of dark humor. So there was more dark humor in this than it was dark in this. So if you're expecting this to be a horror flick, it is not. Do not believe the lie. Go and see this for yourself. Overall, this movie is a very fun popcorn flick, and you're going to have a very good time watching it. I advise anyone that watches this movie, definitely see it in IMAX or 3D. It is made for that, 100%. But if you don't have the extra money, seeing it standard with friends is still a very good, well, a very fun time. My verdict for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is 4 stars out of 5.